In today's world, gun detection is an essential part of protecting any campus. As the head of safety and security for Lynchburg City Schools, how do you deal with detecting guns on campus?
When it comes to detecting guns on our campus, we have integrated several different systems, one of them being metal detectors. The second one is the Bosch gun detection cameras. That's what we're using together because we find that it closes the gaps and eliminates any discrepancies or human factor. If there's a staff member monitoring the metal detectors, some of the hurdles that we have encountered would be normalcy bias, where, oh, it's just another 3-ring binder, or it's always the student's backpack. It always, sets off the metal detectors. It's never a big deal. A situation like that is a perfect example for a bad actor to set the school up for the normalcy bias to then get a free pass through the metal detector. The way that the Bosch gun detection cameras come into play, by closing the gap in that situation, if a gun is presented, the Bosch gun detection cameras react in a millisecond and they immediately interact with our emergency notification system, locking down the school, notifying 911, the SRO on campus. All of those factors come into play, and those variables that normally would be hurdles in themselves, it handles all of that for us, and it takes out the human factor, also the delay of that screener that has to go through training, and then if they don't hit a gun on detection, when they do, there's a delay. There's the human factor of, I can't believe that this is happening. Sure. What do I do? How do I do this? They forget their training because they're not going through training like a TSA screener or a police officer or someone like that. Most of the time it's either a coach or an English teacher or a school administrator, and it's not their primary duty. It's not something that they're trained up on.
Yeah, and that's the last thing a teacher wants to do as an additional job, is to also have to be protection for the school. So that's what you mean by filling in the gaps.
Yes, yeah.
So help me understand a little bit the technicality behind it. What is the order of operations? Are these two systems, the metal detectors and the Bosch gun detection, co-located somehow? How do you deploy these?
So the first thing we had to do was we had to assess the situation of where our ingress was coming, what was the volume, how many metal detectors we needed, what could handle that flow of traffic, and how were we going to backwards plan to get them in school on time for their classes. Then we had to say how many people do we have to staff, and then what is the best detection system that we could use for those screeners, and then how do we complement that. So that's why we went with the Bosch gun detection, because of the capabilities, the AI. We tested it. We had a company come out, they set up some cameras, and we tried to break the system. We tried to fool it. We tried to do everything we could to trick it, and every single thing that we did failed. The Bosch gun detection came out on top every single time.
Yeah, you make a great point. I talk in the industry that often the challenge with any detection or analytic isn't so much getting them to go off, it's getting them not to, and all the things that can trick it.
I have to tell you about one of the challenges that we really got creative with to try to defeat this system. And we tried everything with hiding firearms, picking them up off the floor, to just, carrying it in and acting like it was nothing. We tried to trick it with fruit, with cell phones, with everything else. So we had a sawed-off shotgun that was about 15 inches long, not big at all. And my assistant with this is a retired police officer, and he's very crafty, very nimble with his movements and everything. He actually hid the shotgun up the back of his jacket and had his jacket tight, so it held it in. He walked in normal. He looked around. He didn't see anybody. The camera's tracking him. You can see the yellow box on him tracking his person, and it just says person. And he reached up, put his hand behind his back. He grabbed it. I don't know how he did this, but he started to whip it around, and as soon as he got 3/4 of that firearm out, there was a red box around that firearm before he even displayed the whole firearm. It was amazing. It was just amazing. He was a ninja with the firearm. You never would have known he had it. A person never would have seen it coming.
That's really incredible. And, we can look at these scenarios as if they're sort of fringe, but the fact of the matter is when these things happen in real life, it's exactly that kind of thing in many cases. So that's a really great anecdote. So that's great that you did that testing. How do your employees, staff, teachers, and of course students feel with all of this? Does that make them feel safer? Does it feel, you always kind of have to walk that line between what feels safer and what feels like a fort and can kind of be counterproductive. How have you rolled that out?
It's a really insightful question too, and I'm excited to answer that, because when you show people how much you're protecting them, how much you care about them, because a lot of times people focus on the students, they don't focus on the staff, and the staff are human beings too. They have feelings, and they get into this because they love children, they love what they do. So when you're able to go to a staff member and say, these are the protective measures that we have in place because you're just as important to us as the students, the response from them is through the roof. It's smiles, it's a sigh of relief, and if you explain to them how it works, they don't feel that it's invasive, that they're being recorded all the time. They know they're being recorded, and it's a matter of, well, I don't feel like you're violating my rights, you're actually protecting me. And our goal is that we don't turn the schools into prisons. We turn them into castles. And I always joke around and say that the principals are the kings and queens of their castles. Well, all we're doing is fortifying the castles. Now, the metal detectors, it's a little imposing. You have to walk through it. We try to make it as little invasive or least invasive as possible. But the gun detection operates in the background, sort of in the shadows. You don't know that it's going on. And even when we don't have somebody monitoring the metal detectors, the gun detection cameras are always running, always searching, always working, and nobody has to monitor those because they're on an automated system where that emergency notification system is triggered as soon as they detect a firearm.
Yeah, you have that added frictionless, transparent layer that adds another measure of safety. One of the things that I've noticed in the market is people are so desperate to do something about gun violence that they just reach for the first technology that they read about. And there are really two primary problems. One is concealed weapons, and the other is the dreaded active shooter. And they're very different problems that require different solutions. Are you, for Lynchburg specifically, is there one or the other that you're working towards, or do you have mitigation tactics for both? How do you handle those two problems?
So a lot of it is training and establishing protocols. So we have threat protocols that provide solutions and strategies offered to the staff of the school. Everybody has access to the threat protocol. They have it on their school-issued phones. It's on their computers. It's just a simple Google Doc that's shared, so they're familiar with it. Anybody can fill it out, and that gives them that sense of ownership of safety in their schools, and that's how we incorporate it. And then we do regular drills once a month, and we're honest with people. We say, look, everything that we do, it may be under the guise of it's a fire drill, it's a tornado drill, it's an earthquake drill, it's a lockdown drill. But in reality, what we're doing is we are preparing and training for the worst day that we could possibly ever have. And that's how we mitigate that.
Wow, okay. So what have been the results of this system? Have you caught any weapons yet?
No.
Thank goodness.
But it has acted as a deterrent. And there's different reward schedules when you're training an animal to sit, a dog or something like that. You're going to go with a continuous reward schedule, and then you're going to go with what's called an intermittent reward schedule. So you might not give him that biscuit every time he sits, but he's going to sit a lot faster because he didn't get it the first time, but he might get it the second or the third time. That's called classical conditioning. It's Pavlov with the dog and the bell.
Sure.
The same thing applies to weapons detection. So you hit them hard with the metal detectors for 1 or 2 weeks where you're going every single day, and then maybe you go to every other day or every Thursday. Now they don't know when you're going to detect. And because they don't know when, it's harder for them to develop countermeasures. So one of the things that you have to remember, they're going to research. If somebody wants to do something bad at your school, they're going to watch your security, they're going to look for your weaknesses, and then they're going to try to exploit those weaknesses. And in past, you've had people bring weapons and firearms into school by hiding them inside an art project because they knew the screener wasn't going to ruin their art project, and there was a firearm inside it. So the firearm went around the metal detector, it didn't go through it, and nobody noticed it. And then when that firearm was brought out in full display, that particular school did not have a weapon detection gun camera type of system like the Bosch gun detection, which would have caught it right away. And then, they don't have to be inside either. Like right now we're talking about cameras, I'm talking about them being after the screeners. There's a Bosch gun detection system that's outside the school, that's from high up. So when you get somebody that's coming from a car and they present that firearm, you have a very early warning type of system. And how would they know that some camera 30 feet up is looking for guns? And those are the things you don't put out. You don't put out all of your ingredients to your recipe for success, because then you become unsuccessful.
Yeah, it's something that I've talked to my colleagues about, what I call the speeding ticket principle, that the cops don't have to catch every speeder or even most speeders. They just need to catch enough speeders that it's not worth speeding to most people, when you can create that demonstrable behavior change that you're referring to. That's great, and I think it's interesting where even if you do that intermittent reward, as you put it in the dog training analogy, but the visual gun detection, the Bosch gun detection system, is running all the time regardless.
Yes.
So that transparent layer is there even if the active layer isn't. Is that correct?
Right. We give the perception, again, you don't give away all your secrets, but we give the perception that we're not screening for firearms, and truth be told, we actually are.
Okay. Wow. That's really very at the forefront, I would say, of dealing with these kind of things. But we're getting to a place where I think the question is not if I'm going to come up with a plan for weapons on my campus. It's how am I going to do this? And I think it's important to have early adopters like you. What recommendations would you give to a school, a higher ed campus, maybe even a corporate campus that is dealing with some of the same challenges as you, about helping people feel safe to do their jobs, whatever that job is in their facility? What recommendations would you give to them for rolling out a system like this?
So definitely look at budgetary constraints. You have to look at what do you have the ability to purchase, what's your buying power, and then what are the long-term plans for that. With the Bosch gun detection system, one of the considerations is the one-time license fee. A lot of businesses know what they have now, but they don't know what they're going to have in 3 years. And if this is something they purchase now that has a lifespan that's longer than that, now they have longevity of that solution. And if it's something that's scalable that they can build on, so again, projecting out, it's almost like the old job interview. Where do you see yourself in 1, 3, and 5 years? Where do you see your gun detection in 1, 3, and 5 years? And how are you going to fit those needs or meet those needs? The other thing, too, is to assess what you already have. So again, talking about scalability, if you already have something that's working, like say you did have the metal detectors already in place, but you want to enhance that, because everything is, like I always say, like a slice of Swiss cheese. It's going to have holes, and if you layer the Swiss cheese, you're going to cover those holes like a good old sandwich, right? Well, if you already have metal detectors in place, but you want to enhance that, how can I enhance that? And what is my purchasing power? And then looking at what we used to say in the military, economy of force. Where am I going to be the most effective? Well, where are my students coming into school? I've got 1,100 out of the 1,200 students coming in off the buses. I've got 100 students coming in from car rider line, if it's a middle school or something like that. If it's a high school, those numbers are going to be a little skewed, a little bit different. But you look at where you need it, and that's where you put it first. And then you look at, well, where else would I like to have it? And that's where I'm going to go. And then you go back and you evaluate what you got, you perform a little recon, you look at how is it working, and then you supervise and refine. And you say, okay, you know what, maybe I need to pull one of the metal detectors because my line from my car riders is backing up. So I need 2 over there if I had 4 total, 2 and 2 versus 3 and 1. Well, then you have to say, well, what about my late arrivals to school that are coming in through the office? How are they getting screened? Because that's a good way to get a firearm in the school, because there's no metal detector. So if I'm just late today, I can get the gun in the school. So then you have to have policies and procedures and a checklist to go through it, and then you have to have signage. And also, going through the crime prevention through environmental design, put signs up. Say this school is protected by metal detectors or gun detection systems, if you wanted to be a little more generic, and make it plural. Even if it's not plural, make it plural.
Yeah, those are great tips, and I think more and more entities are going to need to follow those kind of things. You mentioned a little bit earlier one of your gun detection systems or visual gun detection systems from Bosch was outside the building before people even access. Do you have more plans or other instances where you're kind of pushing that detection perimeter out? I assume the metal detectors are in the lobby somehow?
Right, right. Yeah, you have to, the big problem with my system now is I'm detecting inside the school. So now I already have a firearm inside the school. And I always have at least one firearm inside the school because I have an SRO that's armed. So there's always one firearm on campus, and that's something you always have to consider. You want to push that barrier out, but again, you can't let it feel like a prison. It has to be a warm, inviting place. Students are going to have to want to come to school. Staff members want to come to work. And if they feel safe and they can see that perimeter, they know that, hey, here I am. If you look at one of the other school shooters, they got in through a propped open door. Mm-hmm. So there's always going to be a hole in that piece of Swiss cheese. And if you can push that perimeter out, that barrier out, now you give yourself more time. So with my security officers, I'd say that their primary function in life is to detect, delay, or deter an active shooter. So if they can detect them, they can engage them. If they can delay them, others can engage them. And if they can deter him, he never comes around. He or she never comes around. And so again, everything that we've talked about in this conversation is on those three principles when you think about it.
You mentioned earlier that you did quite a lot of testing before you started to implement this as part of your daily routine at school or your system. What was that performance testing like? What was your criteria for a valuable system? How did you work through that? Was there a systematic approach?
There was a plan in place, and we were encouraged by the contractors that were coming out to set all this up, by the professionals, the technicians. Try to break our system. We want you to break it. If you do break it, we're going to make it better. So they took it as a learning opportunity as well. They wanted to know, what are we going to throw at it, and how is it going to work, and where are any shortcomings going to be? And there were zero. And we tried hard. We dressed in all black or black tops, and we concealed firearms under our armpit. I was one of the testers. I came in and I had a handgun underneath my armpit in a black jacket with a black shirt underneath it, and it was a black firearm. And I came in and I looked around, and so, to get the AI to see if it was tracking and all that. And then I just went down on one knee, pretended to tie my shoe, reached in, pulled it right out, and within a fraction of a second, the cameras alerted on the firearm. And it was a red box, and there was an audible alarm, and it sent out this audible alarm, which was amazing because it's going to immediately get your attention, and it captured the entire screen on this large TV screen. So I always say it took it hostage, basically. It was all over it. Mm-hmm. And there was the image of me with the alert, with the red box around it, and it was an audible alarm, and it got sent out to everybody that it would have gotten sent out to. So you have that notification system, and that was amazing. We loved that. And there were other tests that we did. We had 2 people with firearms, because when I did my market research and looking at what the products were out there, it was very much a sterile environment. Everybody's sitting at the board table. One guy is standing up. He walks in and he's got a handgun. There's nothing else to confuse it with. There's white walls. It's a black handgun. We didn't go that route. We had black shirts, black jackets, black handguns, different types of handguns. I mean, everybody can bring out an M4 platform or a long gun, a rifle that's this big, that's easy to spot. But if you come in and bring in a subcompact handgun that's very small, maybe 4.5 to 5 inches barrel length, and you're hiding it, and then you pull it out and it's black on black and it immediately picks it up, that's an amazing thing. We did 2 people, 2 firearms. It picked up both, 2 different types of firearms, 2 people moving in different directions, and we had a 2-camera system, and those cameras had interlocking field of view, and it immediately caught both of them at the same time, if not a fraction of a second in between, but they were both closer and faster than a human would have recognized it. We also took that same scenario, and one of the gunmen had a gun, the other one didn't. One gunman pretended to be shot and fell on the ground. The second person looked around, reached down, and as soon as they lifted that firearm, gun detection detected it right away, that it was in a person's hands. Then we had a police officer walk through with a holstered firearm. Didn't detect on him because it's a holstered firearm. It wasn't presented, so that way you don't have the false hits. Again, the normalcy bias. Oh, it's hitting on the SRO again. No, it doesn't do that. So that was beautiful. So those were some of the tests we performed with it. And like I said, it passed with flying colors. It was nothing short of amazing.
I have to say, Nick, it's really great to hear that as someone who's worked on this project for a number of years now, to hear that kind of performance in the wild and in real world scenarios is really rewarding and validating for that work, that we might actually be able to make a difference. Maybe the last thing that I want to ask you about, you mentioned detect, delay, deter. And you also mentioned a little bit about an audible alarm in your testing. One of the things that I run into with a lot of schools and facilities is they're eager to detect the problem, the firearm, of course, but they struggle with what happens downstream of that. What do we do next? And you mentioned some of the processes and procedures that you have in place, but take me through, if the Bosch gun detection system goes off, what happens?
So what we are setting up, and we're a very unique situation where I have a passion for this, and it's contagious, and people want to be part of that. And when you go to people and you say, this is what I'm doing, this is where I want to go, this is my vision for this, I've had the a big blessing of people want to be involved. And we're working on different technologies and different notification systems and really revolutionizing it and pushing it forward. And one of the things that we're doing is that the Bosch gun detection cameras, when they do alert, it will immediately integrate with our notification system, which also integrates with the 911 center. So now you have this lightning fast chain of events that are going on. And so if the Bosch gun detection says, I have a firearm detected at door 15, lock down the school gets locked down, and the reason for the lockdown in the subcategory in the narrative is firearm detected at door 15. That information immediately goes to the 911 center, and they get that information, which immediately, now they're dispatching units, and units are self-dispatching at the same time, because all of our SROs, our watch commanders, our supervisors on the police department have the same system on their cell phone. So when that emergency notification system is notifying the 911 center, it's also notifying those individual officers' cell phones. So they're going to move towards that school, and they know where to go, they know how to respond. Now what's really unique is what we did was we took the maps of our schools, we overlaid the Bosch camera system on top of the maps. So what happens with the Bosch camera system, when it detects a firearm, those icons for the cameras are blinking red. It's leaving you a breadcrumb trail of where that firearm is moving through that school system. It's also leaving you a method to triage. Do I have any victims? What kind of EMS units do I need to dispatch to that location, to stage, to be ready for when that actual threat is neutralized? So the response time is through the roof. And the integration of all the Bosch cameras and everything else with this, now you couple in the gunshot detection cameras that you have. Okay, well, if there's shots fired, if, say, one of the cameras might malfunction and doesn't detect the firearm because he did conceal it again or something, but then his back is turned, the camera may not see it, but it picks up the shots fired, now we have those alerts, so we still can map that location. And then if you couple that, if when you're trying to egress at school, an emergency egress, and you could use AI functions, say, give me a safe exit point, that AI can utilize all that information from the Bosch gun detection system and the firearm detection to say, it's on the west side of the school, you need to egress out the east side of the school. That information, that just like that, it's faster than a human, it's always working.
You're describing something that we've been working on for a long time, the mapping piece. I'm here to co-sign on that. If you just pop up for an operator a random hallway in a school, it's very difficult to tell where exactly that is. But in this mapping component, you can see immediately where, in relation to everything else, that situational awareness. I think that's huge. The dynamic evac, I would love to see you really pioneer that and make that mainstream, because I think that it's kind of sad to imagine what maybe some of the events we've been through would have, how much better they could have been if we had dynamically evacuated. But there's always that hope that if there is a next one, we have those tools. Nick, I can't thank you enough for talking to us a little bit about your experience. It feels really good to hear a project that you worked on get out into the wild and produce the results that you've described here. And I think your experience and insight is going to be really helpful to some other people who are trying to deploy similar safety measures in their facilities.